issued treasury debt. And they have even been so successful, they've convinced other central banks that US treasury debt is a reserve asset. Now central banks around the world are sitting on trillions of dollars of treasury debt as a reserve asset, which has the huge counterparty risk now of the American government. They will not repay it.
So we've been inflating the dollar, inflating the dollar, inflating the dollar like a balloon. Is this balloon going to pop?
Yes. The suppression of the gold price is coming to an end. The gold price has already risen from a low of $255 in 2001 to a high recently of $1,000. And this is a sign that the scheme is starting to lose traction, because it depends on central banks being able to continue to put extra supply of gold into the market to keep the price down. The central banks have been doing this for 15 years and are now, on our estimates, probably consumed 50 to 60% of their gold reserves. At the same time, demand for gold by the general public is going up. There obviously is the breaking point coming where gold will skyrocket, and it will go to numbers which will probably surprise even the most bullish people.
In 2008, GATA took out a full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal warning of impending financial disaster due to the suppression of gold price. What was the response? What
GATA has had to say for 10 years has largely been ignored by the US press and, of course, government officials. And we got so frustrated with that, we took out this full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal. It cost $264,000. And warning the general public that if this manipulation of the gold price doesn't stop, then there would be significant catastrophe and disaster in the market. And we got no response. So the problem with this scheme is that it's in a lot of people's interests in the financial world, and of course the media that's linked to the financial world, for it to continue.
Do you credit one Russian government official as the first anywhere in the world to acknowledge your claims of gold manipulation?
Okay, this was Oleg Mizakov, who was the deputy chairman of the Russian Central Bank, who made a speech in 2004 to the London Bullion Market Association, their annual meeting. And in that speech, he mentioned that a group of economists had got together to form GATA, and we had expounded these theories that the gold price is manipulated, and that suppression is allowing the US a exorbitant privilege of being able to spend a lot more than it should be able to spend.
Mr. Douglas, you say the entire financial crisis that the US and world is living through right now has come about through derivatives. What are derivatives?
This is not understood by a lot of people and not mentioned in the press very much. But derivatives are essentially like an insurance contract. And you can take out an insurance contract against something happening. Well, because the system has been rigged, and many of the big money center banks and the large insurance companies like AIG have known that the system was rigged, they've been able to capitalize on it. So they have been able to sell trillions of dollars of derivative contracts to be able to get insurance premiums basically every month on those contracts and be very wealthy out of that, knowing that they would never have to pay out on the contract because the system was rigged. And this is where the problem has recently developed, was that the subprime mortgage created defaults in those derivatives, and that has created a daisy chain effect through the system that now these contracts are payable. So instantaneously, black holes of trillions of dollars have appeared in the balance sheets of many banks, and this is what's being referred to as toxic assets.
So instead of the stimulus plans that keep getting pushed out of Washington, what would you suggest needs to be done to save the U.S. economy?
First of all, we need to outlaw the OTC derivatives. Second thing we need to do is to abolish the Federal Reserve and nationalize the banks. The Federal Reserve is a private bank, and the government has to pay them interest for creating money out of thin air, which the government could do on its own without having to pay any interest. The third thing we need to do is to back the currency with gold. And we need to, of course, reinstate discipline in lending and enforce the rules, the rules that keep the stock market honest and keep the banking system honest.
And do you think that the Obama administration is going to do any of the four things you just mentioned?
It would take a lot of courage to do the things that I've said, because there are a lot of advisors who have vested interests in those things not being done. But I think, the American people need to wake up and realize what's happening to their country. And I think if the American people make enough noise, then perhaps President Obama might listen to the people instead of listening to some of his advisors who have another agenda.